Those moments in life where we are standing on a crossroads, looking into different directions, and we are wondering where to go. What is the best choice? What will hold our highest path? And what is the higher purpose? There are so many different ways to handle these type of situations. We could continue looking for information and we could dive into all the different options. We could also ask for signs of the universe, or we could just avoid making any choice or decision all at once. This is the energy of the full moon in Sagittarius that we are going to talk about today. Welcome to the 5th episode of Starline Activations. If you are new here, my name is Anke. I am an astrologer, I'm a mystic, and I'm a mother, and I'm very happy that you are here. Before we dive into the chart, let's take a moment to really dive into the energy, because what I want to talk about today is where we keep asking for another sign to show the path. That moment where we keep waiting for a sign or something to happen in order for us to move, because that is the exact axis of this full moon. The sun will be at 9 degrees of Gemini and the moon will be at 9 degrees of Sagittarius, creating this full moon. And the axis is between the lower and the higher mind, between information and meaning, the axis between knowing and trusting. And Gemini, the sun in Gemini, keeps collecting information. It is seeing things from all the different angles. It is really in the moment and it has a lot of information. But what does information mean if you keep only collecting it? That is exactly where Sagittarius is coming in. Gemini knows a lot, but Sagittarius is trusting the knowing. And under this full moon, this becomes so much more clear because the sun is not standing alone in Gemini. Uranus is there as well, and we will dive into that a little bit later. And I don't mean that Sagittarius is better than Gemini, because one cannot be without the other. Without Gemini, Sagittarius has no information to turn into meaning, which then creates wisdom. Without Gemini, it has no knowing to trust. The opposites are always working together in a way, and they can be seen as sisters or partners, and they fill in each other's gaps. And Gemini is an air sign. Gemini is very curious, it is communicative, it is very witty or social, it is talkative, and it is a very fast moving energy. But Gemini is also more. It is also the messenger between realms. And this is not so often mentioned, but if you look at the methodology that created actually the zodiac sign of the twins, it goes much deeper. It goes back to Castor and Pollux, the two brothers. One was mortal and one was immortal. One day the mortal brother dies, Castor, but Pollux cannot bear the thought of being without him, of being separated. And he is asking his father Zeus to make him mortal so that he could be reunited with his brother through that. And Zeus, according to the methodology, does not make him mortal, but he neither resurrects Castor. So he makes the brothers spend time in the underworld, partly, and partly amongst the gods in Olympus. And this is how they become the travelers between worlds, forever moving, forever together, humans and divine, body and spirit. So it really is emphasizing the polarity. And that is the deeper layer of Gemini. And this Sagittarius moon on the other side, right across from the sun in Gemini, the moon is in a fire sign. Sagittarius is holding the vision. Sagittarius is seeing the larger picture, sees beyond all the details, and creates meaning and faith out of the information that Gemini has been collecting. It is seeing the patterns through life, and based on that belief, it trusts beyond the regular mind. And therefore, Sagittarius is representing the higher mind, or sometimes even said the higher truth. And while in general the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, are connected to intuition, fire is holding a very strong sense of knowing, deep knowing, and it is acting upon this deep knowing. It doesn't go through feeling safe first, like the water signs. It is going through trusting by that knowing and then acting upon that knowing. And that is why it is very different from those water signs. And coming back to the beginning, how in times of uncertainty, we search for certainty outside of ourselves, how we keep looking for answers and signs, usually outside of ourselves. This full moon is actually illuminating that we already know, and we have always known. Sometimes we might not be 100% sure or 100% aware of the fact that we already know, because it might be in our subconsciousness or even in our unconsciousness, but we know. And this full moon is asking us to start trusting that, trusting what we are already receiving. And I have seen many times these posts that people nowadays post, and it says something like, you don't have to become more intuitive, you have to start listening to it. And I want to nuance this a little bit, because what is actually intuition? We use that word a lot, and as a triple water sign, I'm a double Cancer with a Pisces moon. Intuition is a lifelong theme. It is quite literal, the lens through which I experience life through this lifetime. And sometimes when a word gets used a lot, it's not that I feel that it loses its meaning, but it does become a little bit saturated, and we almost forget what people actually mean with the word. For example, what people mean with trust your intuition, listen to your intuition, follow your intuition. Because what are people asking for in that moment? It is not just to follow an inner thought or to follow an inner feeling. To me, there is this connection to the ability to perceive something before your conscious mind is fully understanding it and trusting it without needing to understand it. And then that comes back to, if you don't need to understand it, then there is also no attachment to it. And to me, that can arrive in many ways. For example, through feelings or dreams, through images. You can feel it in the body, you can just have a knowing, you can feel drawn to something, or quite the opposite, feel resistance, symbols. There are so many different ways that intuition can come through. And this is exactly why I think that sometimes people do not fully trust it if they haven't had the chance to build trust with it. Because it's not always a clear statement in your mind. It's more like this slow whisper of patterns that repeat feelings, and your mind just doesn't have the context for it. So then coming back to the post, this is the reason why I want to nuance it a little bit. While I understand those posts and I understand the people behind them, what they are trying to see, I feel that there is another layer that wants to be touched upon, because the sentence, you don't have to become more intuitive, you just have to start listening to it, it will suggest that intuition is always 100% available and accessible to everyone. And I do believe that everyone is intuitive by nature, but I don't believe that everyone always has full access to that intuition, because to me, intuition is not simply hearing an inner voice. Being intuitive is suggesting that you are able to hear a clearer voice without immediately becoming attached to the outcome of what that voice is trying to say. So that way, your channel is clear enough to recognize this is fear, or this is longing, or this is just my nervous system trying to react to something, or this is an old wound, this is a desire, and you can continue like that. It will have the discernment between those different expressions, between those different feelings, and it will, when you have a true, clear, intuitive channel, you are not attached to what is being said through your channel. And that is why this feels different, because if you do not have the discernment yet to differentiate between those different things that can come up, then just listening to it might actually be bypassing something. Because if that stream inside of you is not that clear yet, just listening to your intuition can very easily become listening to your fear and then call it intuition, or listening to urgency and then calling it a sign, or listening to longing and then calling it destiny. And I think that is where discernment comes in, not becoming more intuitive, but becoming more capable of recognizing the difference. And then on the point where you start recognize the difference, you then start to trust what you are receiving. And those posts usually forget those steps. And I do find it important to mention that, because trust doesn't happen just by saying, I trust myself now. I've gone into this in other episodes as well, but I truly feel that trust is built. Trust comes from repeated moments of authenticity, repeated moments of following what is true to you, following your real clean inner voice. And that will then really build that trust, and that will build a very, very clean channel. And when you have that, it is becoming your lived evidence. And maybe that is exactly what this Sagittarius full moon is illuminating, that we already know it from the inside. We already have the information. It is a matter of now fully acting upon that information, fully living it. And there are truths that we have already received many times, and now the full moon is asking, how many more signs do you need before you trust what is keep returning to you? This is what I see when I look at the full moon chart. Gemini wants enough information before it starts to move, and Sagittarius trusts that movement is revealing the next layer. That's how they work together. And this is also where I want to bring in some intuition tools, because if intuition is something that we receive, the natural next question would be, so how do we then practice that receiving? How do we practice that discernment to have that clean channel? And sometimes I feel there is a little bit of a misconception about what intuitive tools actually are and what they do. Sometimes people come to readings, whether it is an astrology reading, a session for the Akashic Records, or other types of readings. It is usually for an answer, looking for someone or something outside of oneself to tell them what to do. And I understand that, because I have been in that spot, especially in moments of uncertainty in my own life, because we want clarity to come from somewhere that feels very stable, something that we can trust, and somewhere that feels more certain than we do with ourselves in that moment. But what I see now is that intuitive work is not coming from a question and answer. It's not coming from a Q&A. How it works is that it is more a structure for translation. Intuitive tools help us because they take something that already exists within you and they help you to put regular language to it beyond the linear thinking of the mind. And what they give is, for example, a symbol, an image, a pattern, sometimes just a word, and the one working with the tool, the practitioner, is then the channel through which that translation is happening, which also means that the quality of what is coming through is entirely depending on the clarity of the one who is working with the tool. And that is also why discernment matters. But it comes back to a translation. It comes back to an already knowing and putting words to it. I work with different tools, of course with astrology, but also with the Akashic Records, with light language, with the pendulum, with oracle cards. And each time that I use these tools in different ways, they have taught me the same. For example, with astrology, the chart just is. It's based on mathematics, it's based on degrees, planetary positions, a moment in time. But the reading of the chart, that is where things get noticed. That is where things get named. That's the moment where meaning gets drawn from the different symbols. And that is also why two astrologers reading the same chart will not give you the same reading. Not because one is right and one is wrong, because both are translating it through their own instrument, through their own awareness, and through their own lived experience of what those symbols mean. Some things will stay the same, of course, but it might be that you have two different readings of your same birth chart, and one will resonate more than the other. And that is because it is such human work. So coming back to, we use intuition tools to find answers. Once done with integrity and with a clear discerning channel, it is actually one of the most direct ways that we can connect to our inner selves. And this is translating very directly to this full moon energy, because it is all information coming from Gemini. and then with Uranus right next to it. So do we trust it enough to turn that into wisdom? That is what Sagittarius is asking of us, the full moon. Because there are also moments where we seek signs, but not from a place of being open, but because we are avoiding something, where we pull another card because the first one might have said something that we didn't want to hear, or when we ask the same question to the pendulum again because the answer just didn't feel right the first time around, or where we open another reading from another person, another voice, because we kind of already know what we want to hear and we are hoping for confirmation of that. And I am not saying this in a place of judgment, because I have been there, and I think most of us on this path might have felt that at times, but there's a difference between genuine seeking and spiritually procrastination or form of spiritual bypassing, and the line between them is very thin, because the difference really lies into, are we really open to receive any answer, or are we hoping for a specific answer? Because if we already try to influence it in a way, then we are not fully open to receiving any guidance or any answer. And what that does is keeping us away from the highest path, because sometimes our awareness, our linear mind, our human thinking we cannot go beyond what we don't know yet, and that is very normal. Like, everyone has that. But if we are trying to influence or steering the path in a certain way and not being open to the highest path or the highest guidance, we might not receive the sign that will bring us faster to that highest path. I always believe we cannot do it wrong. Like, one way or another, we will get there. But if we want to truly receive guidance, truly receive signs in our highest alignments, we should be open to receiving it regardless of what the answer is, and not push it in a certain direction. Because when we are pushing the direction, it is a form of avoidance, because there is this urgency underneath it, and then we are not really asking, because we are just searching for permission, for confirmation, for someone or something to take the weight of our decision. And the tools will still give us something. I will share a short example without going too deep into the personal story itself, but there was a moment in my life where I just felt a lot of uncertainty. Things were not clear at all. My partner wasn't sure if he could stay in Europe. I had to switch jobs. I did not know how or where to go. Basically, I just felt like standing into quicksand in a way. And I was moving through these deep spiritual experiences of journeys and multidimensional openings, accessing things I had just no language for, and my daily life felt that there was no ground under it. So that was a little bit my state of mind. And I remember that one morning I was sitting in the car with my partner. He was driving. I was looking out of the window. We were on this drive where it was just silence and it felt good. Nothing had to be said. I love those moments where you can just be in silence and where the energy just feels really good. And even though everything around me, my whole life was not clear, in that moment, it was not like giving up. I truly felt like in this moment of surrender, I let go of needing to know what came next. And then from that place, not being in this form of urgency, not trying to pull in a certain reality, I asked internally, if there is any reason that I am on this path, if any of this is real, then give me a sign I can absolutely not miss. And then the next song that came on the radio without either of us touching it was I saw the sign, it opened up my eyes, I saw the sign. And after that, I just never doubted again. And I am telling the story not about the actual sign, but more of the moment that it happened, how my energy was, how I was feeling, because I was not searching. I was not pulling another card. I was not asking another question and wanting a certain answer. It just arrived from this place of, okay, I don't know. I don't know what's coming next. I don't know how to do it. And I was just open to receive. And I think that is the difference. When we keep asking for another sign, we are often not in that place of being open to receive. We are in a place of already knowing, but not being willing to move with it. And the full moon, this full moon, is asking us to be really honest about that, but with the kind of clarity that says, you have already received more than once, more than twice. The signs have not been very unclear. The knowing is there. So the question is not, was the universe speaking to me? The question is, are you ready to let it change? Are you ready to move with it? And looking at the chart of the full moon, this is translating very precisely that. It is making a lot of sense, because the story and the activation of this full moon with the sun at 9 degrees of Gemini, holding hands with Uranus, and then standing directly across from the moon in 9 degrees of Sagittarius, it is giving this very particular energy. It is not just asking, what belief system am I ready to release? What information have I already received that I'm finally ready to trust? It is doing something much more unexpected. With Uranus there, Uranus is not announcing itself. It is just arriving out of the blue. A side note to that, because this is literally a blue moon, because it is the second full moon in May. We started the month, the 1st of May, with the Scorpio full moon, and we are ending May, the 31st, with the Sagittarius full moon. This is literally a blue moon, and then something out of the blue will arise. And what it can bring can feel shocking, not because it is unfamiliar, but more because a part of you already knew, and the knowing is now shaking up to the surface. It can feel like it is coming from another timeline, like a future version of yourself is walking into the room, and it is not walking in quietly. No, she is throwing the door wide open, and there she is. And you just cannot unsee it. It can feel shocking, but not unfamiliar. But when you sit with it, and I mean like really sit with it, you will find that version of you has always been there, but she just never made it to the surface. And beneath all the unclarity, all the uncertainty, all the searching, all the seeking, it was never new. It was always yours, and it was always there. And then this full moon is not revealing just that information. It is giving you a moment to finally stop pretending that you didn't have the answers. It is seeing it with your eyes open and feeling it into your body and acting upon it. That is what I feel with the energy of this full moon. And the sun is also in trine with Pluto. And what that means is that the full moon is not only illuminating something that will stay surface level, because Pluto doesn't do surface level. It is reaching into the parts of you that you might not have looked at directly, but it has been there in your unconscious patterns. For example, the structures that you have built around the wound, the stories that have been living deep inside of you, but now you are starting to realize that they were stories. And what is revealed under the sky may feel very sensitive and raw, like something is being turned over that had been buried down there for a long time. That is actually the medicine itself. And then the moon is sextiling Pluto as well. So this is not just outwards illumination. It is moving through your body, through your emotional field. And it may arrive first as a feeling and then as a thought. And the sun is receiving a gift from Saturn and Neptune together in Aries. And that is not a small aspect. That is actually something that this whole year is a very important aspect. And that feels to me like an opportunity of what is imagined, what is possible, and how now to actually bring that into reality. So we want to tune into that energy of that gift. Saturn and Neptune in Aries together, that energy is so significant. The meeting of structure and dissolution, how form and vision is being brought into reality, and the sun under this full moon is receiving them both at once. So what is being illuminated is not only meant to be felt, it is meant to build, being really turned into reality. And this full moon is not asking you to only have spiritual insights and a spiritual experience. It is really asking you to then translate that into your reality. So the moon is trining Saturn and Neptune as well. So the knowing, once again, then to come through the body, through the emotional body, not just the mind, into life. And this is where it does get a little bit tricky, because Mars is sitting at 9 degrees of Taurus, which means that it is in conjunct to the moon 9 degrees of Sagittarius. And that creates a little bit of a tension, because that means that Mars and the moon at this point do not have common ground. And that makes it a little bit human, because Sagittarius wants to move, it has the vision, it has the fire, it has clarity of directions. But Mars and Taurus, it does not want to take that leap. Mars and Taurus wants to move slowly and careful, and wants to feel completely certain before it is actually moving. It wants to have a steady ground beyond the feet, and it needs to touch Earth first, while Sagittarius has the larger vision. In this chart, those two energies are not speaking the same language. So how that can feel in reality is as tension, and it may feel like I know what I need to do, but I cannot do it yet. Or I have this clear vision, this large clear vision, but I do not have the capacity to act upon it. And that can feel very frustrating in the body. And I want you to know that that frustration, it is real under this full moon. And that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It means that you are genuinely moving between those different energies. And what I would say is that to give Taurus the time that it is asking for, to whatever is being illuminated, it doesn't have to be as fast as Gemini and Sagittarius are asking. It can be built steadily, and you can still be moving, even if it goes a little bit with smaller steps than you would like. Then looking at the ruler of this lunation, which is Jupiter, because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is the largest planet in our sky, and wherever it is moving, it is expanding, and it brings this quality of luck, quality of abundance, and things becoming more true than they were. And right now Jupiter is in Cancer, and that is the sign of home, of roots, of where we come from, where we return to, also our deep ancient cellular knowing. It is really the sign of feeling, of memory. And under this full moon, Jupiter in Cancer is holding hands with Venus. So the ruler of this lunation, the planet of expansion, is in this embrace with the planet of love, attraction, and what we really, really value. And that is changing this lunation quite a bit, because before we spoke of this fire and air and quick moving, but the ruler of this lunation, Jupiter, is sitting in water. And it is exalted in Cancer. It is the most abundant and lucky place for Jupiter to be in. And that makes this whole lunation all of a sudden very soft and more safe and more close to home, more comfortable, but also all of a sudden more sensitive and more impacting the emotional body. And before, it showed that whatever is showing up is very unexpected and fast, with Uranus being such a big influence in this lunation. All of a sudden we see that it is not going to be that distant as it first looked. It is really going to hit close to home. It's not like somewhere else on a higher plane. It's going to be felt personal. It's close, warm. It could be in a place of relationships, or literally in the home, or something that you just hold very close to you, something personal. And Venus does square Saturn in this sky, and that can create this feeling of restriction, of I can feel what I want, but I cannot reach it yet. And again, Saturn is also asking for patience, for integrity, for building slowly and building something that is meant to last. And I want to remind you that while that feels very contradicting with Uranus storming open the door and here it is, it means that the door is not closed. It just means that the sudden arrival then needs to build something a little bit slower. So checking in with your full moon story, looking back at some dates, we started this lunation cycle with a new moon in Taurus, which was the 16th of May. Then we planted seeds. So I would ask you to look back. What intentions did you set? What were you ready to create, to build? And then on the 23rd of May, we had the first square in Virgo. And what challenge did show up for you? Did you do any adjustments to your intentions? Did anything happen that influenced your intentions? Then, right now, under the Sagittarius Full Moon, the 31st of May, something will reveal itself, it will be uncovered, and that will lead to a certain release. So you want to take that into consideration as well and to write that down. And whatever is showing up now, if we take that into the bigger lunation cycle, as in bigger than this month, you might also want to look back to the Sagittarius new moon on December 20th in 2025. And I recorded, if I'm not mistaken, a new moon episode for that day as well, and I will link it as well. It might be interesting to listen to it and to really tune into for yourself what showed up at the time, because you might have set intentions in December that you are seeing the fruits of now. I am going to dedicate a full episode into these cycles and into these dates, because I have noticed for myself, working with the moon and working with the cycles, that you start to uncover your own rhythm and your own story, which in its way is also an intuitive tool by journaling with these days. And you start to feel so much more in tune with your own cycles and the story that wants to be told. And then before we close, I want to invite you to our live oracle activations that will be actually under the Sagittarius full moon portal this Sunday, 7:30 Central European time. You can still sign up. I will link it below. And there will be giveaways and there will be a lot of intuitive tools. All the energy that we spoke of today will come to the forefront, and I would love to meet you there. So let's now slow down, because this was a lot of information. It was all connected to the mind, but when we turn that information into feeling, when we translate it into the body, is when we integrate it. So let's now fully slow down and tune in to the full moon energy, because it is not just the day of the full moon. It is days before that we feel the build up, sometimes even a week before. We can already tune into the energy. So I invite you to slow down, to really feel your body. If you are sitting down, to feel what you are sitting upon, to just let your body rest. Maybe you want to close your eyes, or just take a deep breath and just wind down for a second and let all that information be felt in your body. Just slowing down. And then I invite you to imagine yourself sitting in front of your house, and on one side of the sky you see this big full moon. And then on the other side of the sky, you see this glowing sun. And both feel so strong, shining right across from each other in the sky. And now imagine these strong, beautiful luminaries as two parts of yourself. Your lunar side and your solar side, shining like a mirror towards each other, illuminating something that wants to come forward for you. Something that was buried deep down inside yourself, but that wants your trust right now. Just let it rise. And whatever is coming forward for you, hold it. Let it become a part of yourself. And then state, if that feels good to you, I am ready to go beyond the signs. I trust what I receive. I welcome what I receive. And so it is. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you on Sunday, and I will meet you in the next one.